I get asked all the time, what's the best mod kit? Which one should I get? The answer is very subjective. For me, I'd say either High-Speed Ito's Laminated V5 or their classic V2. But then there are a lot of FunnyPlaying fanboys that are just wrong. I'm kidding. Sort of. We'll get into that later. But since it is really a different answer for everyone, I'm going to share all of the facts and a lot of my opinions. Trust me, I have a lot of opinions. And you get to decide which one is best for you. That way you can't just skip to the end. You're actually going to have to use your brain if you want the answer. Of course, we need to start with some ground rules. This is for IPS kits only. No TFT, no AGS 101 mod, no stupid DSI screens. I said what I said. IPS only. Well, all of these are at least advertised as IPS. Whether or not they actually are, I'm not 100% clear on. And I decided to leave out the FunnyPlaying V2 for many reasons. It's no longer being sold. It's really similar to High-Speed Ito's V2, and it's just arguably worse. Also, this is probably a good time to drill into your heads which kits are which of the ones that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give them all nicknames because I don't want to say FunnyPlaying and High-Speed Ito more than I have to. These companies need better names. But this is the V5, this is the 3.0, this is the CGS, this is the V2, and this is the non-laminated version of this one that we're going to call drop-in, since they are exactly the same. And lastly, we're going to compare them all category by category, starting with all of these kits are compatible with all GBA motherboards. So what I mean by compatibility is how many different shells can these kits work with. For example, the drop-in kit will work with any original or OEM style shell, plus a lot of the IPS ready shells without the need for trimming. However, the V5, V2, and CGS have their own pre-trimmed shells. Thankfully, they are still compatible with pretty much every shell if you're willing to do some significant trimming. And of course, how you trim depends on each kit. None of them are the same. But the worst offender by far is the 3.0 kit. FunnyPlaying decided to go the absolute dumbest route of making a proprietary shell design. So you cannot use any other shell but theirs that are specifically for the laminated 3.0 and ITA kits, which wouldn't be a big deal when most people buy a pre-trimmed shell anyways, but it's a huge deal when the build quality is terrible. Now, I'm not going to go drop testing these things. I don't have the stomach for that. But there are definitely some flaws that I need to point out. I could talk forever about the terrible design of FunnyPlaying's laminated shells, and I will. But let's talk about the others first, because the rest really only have a few small flaws that I think are one-offs or uncommon. My CGS kit came off-center, and it's slightly annoying. Also, why the heck are you laminating a screen to a plastic screen lens? What's wrong with you guys? Saving $1? You should definitely be using a durable glass lens for something that is permanently stuck to this screen. If I get a giant scratch in my screen lens because it's plastic and it's bound to happen, if I want to replace it, I can't just replace the screen lens. I have to replace the entire screen. Either way, neither of those problems really affect me that much. It's just the threat of future scratches to that plastic lens that annoy me, but I thought it was still worth bringing up. The non-laminated kits, I don't really have problems with the build quality, but FunnyPlaying, oh boy, where do I begin? I will admit that most ribbon cables are flimsy and tear easily, but this one is incredibly thin. It may be a nitpick, but it feels extremely cheap and I just don't like it. But attached to the other ribbon cable is this awful thing. The touchpad. Touchpads are bad no matter what kit we talk about, but this one is exceptionally terrible. I had this happen on not one, but two of the 3 kits I tested in my original video. Without even touching the device, the mod kit would decide to spam the touch sensor. I had to trim or completely remove the touchpad to get it to stop, but even then, it would still do it occasionally. When this happens, the Game Boy is pretty much unplayable, and the only way to get it to stop is to turn the system off completely. Great job! Apparently I'm one of only a few that this has happened to, but FunnyPlaying didn't take me very seriously because the design has been updated exactly 0 times since. So I've yet to bother giving it a second try, or I guess a 4th try. Speaking of things that need an update, let's talk about the shell. It is so fragile. It's not even funny. There is no structural integrity down here. And if your mod kit isn't perfectly inserted in this hole when you screw the motherboard down, it's gonna crack. And there is no way to lock the screen into place until after you've screwed down the motherboard. Why does the bracket not lock itself into the shell? I have no idea. It's not like they designed both of those things. Oh, wait. So you have to be very careful when installing this. This is a design. I don't care that I'm not an engineer. That doesn't matter. You just have to look at every other shell and notice that there is extra plastic that runs down the bottom to give it structural integrity. FunnyPlaying said, let's make it as annoying as possible to install. Make sure there is as little plastic in it as possible, and make it a design that you are forced to use so we can make even more money off of you. Every other kit has a way better installation method that you should have just copied. You know, like the homework meme, just do that. Obviously, the drop-in kit is going to be the easiest installation process across most shells, so to be more fair, I'm going to focus on the kits being installed in their respective pre-trimmed shells, which honestly, all those screens go into their pre-trimmed shells pretty well. The V2 can go in a little crooked if you're not careful, but just take your time and it'll be fine. Pro tip, when you use any color screen lens that's not black, it's going to be a lot more obvious when it's crooked or off center. So that's why I typically stick to black screen lenses. For the laminated kits, again, they're all pretty easy. The V5 slots into its shell very well and is taped down. My problem with the V5 is it's hard to remove the touch sensor properly. You can just cut it out, yes, but all these touch sensors are just extensions for the points on the board. So if you just cut the wire down and it's touching something else in the console while closed up, you can have a FunnyPlaying situation, and that's not good, which would all be solved by making holes in the metal to easily remove the touchpads. A hole just like this one here for the other solder points. I think that the all-in-one design is good, just give me access to all the points on the board without having to remove the cage. The CGS kit doesn't have button controls and doesn't technically have anything to solder, but attaching a wire like this is silly. It's the only GBA kit that needs a power wire, and it's still the dimmest of them all. It makes zero sense. Just like it makes zero sense to have no tape on the plastic screen lens. You gotta cut and apply that yourself, otherwise your screen will just fall out. It's just lazy of them, which makes sense because Cloud Game Store doesn't pre-install anything like the shielding or the battery contacts in their shells. I'm surprised they don't have us laminate our own screens too. But of course, FunnyPlaying couldn't just use the installation process that everybody else uses, or even the method that they use with their laminated GBC kits. They were the ones that created this method that they no longer use. You have to install this bracket that doesn't lock into anything, so you have a loose screen, a loose bracket, and then you have to pinch it all together with the motherboard and screw it down. And hopefully you do it right or your shell will crack. Because again, significantly less plastic will make it weaker. Even if you install it right the first time and you don't crack your shell, it's not like GBAs are bottom heavy and that's most likely the place that it's going to hit the floor when you drop it. It's just all around a bad design, and I wish they'd backtrack on the shell because the screen itself is actually pretty good. Now with any IPS kit, the screens are going to look great. There's really only a slight variation between them all, and they're all going to look better than the original. I know it's a camera pointed at a screen, but here's what they all look like, as close to the same brightness level as I can get. You can decide for yourself which one you like the most. They all look awesome though. More important to me is brightness. Most of these kits have a good range of brightness. Some are better than others. They're all adjustable, but the V2 is the only one that requires soldering to adjust it. Otherwise, it's just the middle brightness level, which is kind of a bad thing, but that also means that there are no touchpads at all, and I love that. But on the other side is the CGS kit having no button controls and only having a touchpad. Both the V5 and the 3.0 have touch sensors and button combo options, as well as a cool little menu, which I love, but the 3.0 doesn't let you adjust anything unless you open the menu. There is no adjusting the brightness with select in L or R unless that menu is open. The V5 does allow you to adjust the brightness without opening the menu, though both do allow for adjustments with the touchpad without the need for the menu, if you decide to keep the touchpads. But how bright do these get? The best way to show you that is to step outside. It's the beginning of August in the hot afternoon sun on a clear day, and clearly you can tell that the V2 is going to be the best outside. They all do okay except for the CGS kit. Even the original screen isn't too bad in the sun, but maybe you're the type to play at night before bed and you don't want to wake up your partner. Well, this room is pitch black and these are all of their lowest brightness. This is where the CGS kit is nicer, but ultimately the V5 is the dimmest out of all of them, and the 3.0 is like one nit brighter. Wait, I can't see the original screen. Oh, there it is. But how long does the battery last with these kits' high and low brightnesses? This was a tough one to measure. Initially, I ran battery tests with my rechargeable batteries and quickly realized that even fully charged and equally used over their lifetime, not all of them were equal. So I bought a bunch of Duracell batteries and ran a few tests at brightness levels close to the CGS kit's top brightness. But something still felt off. so I bought a little power supply that will tell me all of the power draw info that I need. I ran this screen of Japanese Pokemon Mystery Dungeon because it's the game I currently own the most copies of, and I ran this shot on each screen of its lowest and highest brightness, and another test that matches the top brightness of the CGS kit, just like I mentioned earlier. Here is hopefully a cool looking graph of the power draw at the lowest brightness of all of these kits, and here is all of the highest brightness levels. This is all the standard 3 volts that a pair of alkaline AA's will run at, and you can use this handy dandy calculator that I will link down below to get estimates of what kind of battery life you would get out of your favorite batteries. The battery life will be shorter, but I prefer having a few pairs of rechargeable batteries on hand rather than spending a bunch of money on alkaline batteries or having to wait for a single LiPo battery to charge before being able to play again. You might be thinking, what about the equal brightness test? I did that to see which kit draws the most power, and that is the Laminated V5 by a lot. You might also be confused because why would the non-laminated version draw way less power? Because I've been lying to you. I really wish I had a ukulele right now. This is actually the V4 because I bought it a long time ago and it sat on a shelf for a while. I just didn't want to make 2 videos back to back about an old kit that isn't being sold anymore. The only difference between the V4 and the V5 is the addition of the OSD, and the color temperature is a little warmer, which actually the V5 gets a little dimmer at its lowest than the V4 does. And all those things are good, but it shouldn't affect the power draw at an equal brightness level. It definitely not by that much. So why does it draw so much power? I'm genuinely asking why. I have no idea. High-Speed Edo, if you're watching this, you gotta figure this out because this isn't right. Thankfully, in my real-world test with the Duracell batteries, it still lasted a decent amount of time, but we all know by looking at the V4, it could and should be better, especially looking at the insanely bright V2, and it seems to last forever. High-Speed Edo, your kits are great, but you need to go back and optimize the power for the V6, or even just a quiet update to the V5, or maybe just laminate the V2 and add an OSD to that. While I did say that I was going to make you decide which kit is the best, I'm going to give out some recommendations for each of them. I still think that each of these kits are good for certain situations. If you play outside a lot and you don't want to use an original display, I'd go with the V2. Solid battery life, and it's the brightest by far. By contrast, if you mostly play at night while someone is sleeping next to you, the V5 and the 3.0 are the dimmest. If you want to use an original shell or most any shell without trimming, the drop-in version of the V5 is pretty much your only option, unless you just use a worm light with an original display. The V5 is probably the best of the laminated kits if you don't mind the shorter battery life like me, and if you would rather have a better battery life but a worse build quality with less features, the 3.0 isn't too bad, I guess. It just put a really bad taste in my mouth, so it's hard to recommend to anyone. Seriously, it tastes awful. And it's even harder to recommend the CGS kit at all. After everything I've learned from this video, I genuinely can't think of a situation where it's decent. It's not the brightest or the dimmest. It's not the most power efficient. The build quality isn't the best, and it needs a power line for no good reason. There's literally no reason to get it. Even if you just like Cloud Game Store shells, you can use them with the drop-in kit because they are one-to-one replicas of the OEM shell. But what would my perfect mod kit look like? I'm glad you asked, because I have a lot of ideas. First of all, the screen should be drop-in with absolutely no trimming on OEM shells. And it would be nice if the laminated version was drop-in too, but I'd like to keep the same screen size, so having a pre-trimmed shell for it is fine too. I hate when kits have screens that are smaller than the original. It makes the bezels look cartoonishly thick. The kit should have a solderless option that still allows you to adjust everything. In a perfect world, that would mean no touchpads. I don't know if it's possible, but maybe there could be an adapter with pogo pins that could allow for solderless button controls. I would assume that there's no room for that, but this is a perfect world. And obviously there should be a menu while keeping the quick adjustments for brightness like the V5 kit. I would like to see 15 to 20 levels of brightness, ranging from crystal clear outside to dim enough to not disturb your partner in bed. And more realistically, the kit should aim for about 8 hours of gameplay at that middle brightness. And I don't know why none of the GBA kits allow you to adjust the position of the screen like FunnyPlaying's GBC kits. It would be a win-win for quality control on laminated kits and for when you botch installing drop-in kits. I'm talking X and Y axis adjustments as well as tilt controls for when you install it crooked. It's pretty easy to install the drop-in screen slightly crooked. No one has tilt adjustments and it blows my mind. And lastly, at least have a screen lens in every color. Not just black, white, and DMG. I'm talking the whole rainbow. And of course, some sick UV print options for shells and lenses. Okay, I think we've covered it all. Now you should be able to pick which kit is best suited for you, which I would love to know what that is and why in those comments down below. And I would like to make some more stuff clear. If you already have an IPS kit, I don't think any of these have enough of a reason to upgrade between. unless another kit fits your playstyle more than the one you already have. While not completely equal, all the IPS kits are going to be a huge visual improvement over the original, and I think you'll be happy with any of them. Maybe not the CGS kit. No matter what kit you end up choosing, you can save money by using code Jake at ZedLabz, Retro Modding, and RGRS. Links to all of them down below. And when you're ready to do the mod, I already have tutorials for all of them. I will say, I'm going to redo the V2 tutorial soon because my initial one was a little quirky. Yeah, quirky, let's go with that. You might just want to follow along with one of my streams until I make a new V2 tutorial. As for the kits I'm going to use for the GBAs I saw on my website, retroremaster.com, I'm going to stick with the V2 and start selling some of the V5s for a laminated option. As for the kits that will inevitably come in the future, I will compare them to everything we discussed in this video in their own future tutorials. So you're going to hear me reference this video a lot going forward, which is fair because I spent a lot of time, money, and effort on this video to make it the ultimate GBA IPS kit comparison. I don't normally ask for likes besides pointing out the like count on streams, but it would be greatly appreciated if you found this video helpful. And of course, subscribing if you're new around here. Now I think that's everything. So like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later, guys. Initially, I ran battery tests with my rechargeable batteries and quickly realized that even fully charged and equally used over their lifetime, Jake, make a shorter sentence,